Hey guys, I just went ahead and fully complete Hellblade 2 Senwa's Saga. Took me about 6.5 hours, but your playtime will likely vary. This is one of those games where I've seen people beat it in as short as 5 hours, and I've seen some people take around 8 hours to do it. So it's going to vary a little bit. I'm a little bit on the slower end when I play games like this. I'm really trying to get, all the collectibles, all the lore, stuff like that. But it's quickly proven to be the most divisive game of the year, the most contentious release of 2024, and possibly within the last few years. You have reviewers like ACG and Yong Yea loving the game. You have reviewers like Luke Stevens really disliking the game. And then you have IGN kind of in the middle. So where do I sit on the spectrum? Well, surprisingly for me, since I didn't really enjoy Hellblade 1 that much, I gave that game a 6.5 out of 10. I really like this game, and I think it is almost unanimously an improvement over the first game. So let me tell you why. Let's get into the pros, the cons, and then I'll give you my final verdict. Right out of the gate, you cannot talk about the pros in this game without talking about the graphics. This is taken directly from my live stream, so it's not going to be, a great representation of the game, but this is easily the best looking video game that's ever been made. And it's not even close. Previously I'd have stuff like Red Dead Redemption 2 up there, Last of Us 2, Plague Tale Requiem, maybe even Cyberpunk with path tracing and ray tracing. This game blows them all out of the water. It is insanely good looking. The performance, a little bit rough. To be expected, which I'll touch on in the cons, but the actual visuals here, I played everything maxed out, and it is just a sight to behold. There are several points in the game where you could easily play it for somebody and tell them that it was a live action movie and they would believe you. I mean, it's insane how good looking this game is. Every single facet of it, the reflections, the texture work, the lighting, all of it is A1, the best ever put into a video game, hands down. But of course, I'm not really a graphics person. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I talked about this in my Rise of the Ronin review. I don't really care about graphics. But it's obviously a positive for the game. It's what most people are going to talk about with the game. It's just, for me, I don't really care about that too much, other than, ooh, it's a cool game to benchmark, my fancy new PC or whatever type of thing. But let's get into things I actually do care about, like the narrative. I really like the story in this game. The story in the first game, I really just found myself a little bit confused. I played half of the game thinking it was some sort of allegory for mental health awareness, and then when I realized, oh, all of this stuff is actually happening, it's not really an allegory whatsoever, and, she actually is fighting all of these demons and fighting all these monsters and stuff, I was not as interested. I was not as invested into the narrative. I thought it would have been a little bit more interesting if they were doing a little something more there. So I didn't really resonate too much with the narrative of the first game. But I think that's also because, I haven't lost a lover or something like that, right? This game is a pretty standard narrative, I would say, in terms of a game. It's a story about somebody with a traumatized past trying to recover from that and trying to be a better, stronger person and help, their community, help those around them, and overall just put a positive spin on the world, make a positive impact after, that they've passed away. And I can really resonate with that a lot more personally. So I found this narrative far more compelling. And I think a big reason for that is that Senwa is in Midgard here. This is not really a spoiler. She's in Midgard, and so she's interacting with other humans. And for me, that does a lot for a narrative. I like people talking to people, having Senwa talk to herself in her head is all grand, but there is something a little bit special about seeing this person that has so much going on up here interacting with other people, trying to hide that, deciding what she should and shouldn't say as the voices are whispering into her ears, you know. And I really liked seeing that play out. I really liked seeing her interact with other human beings, see their takes on her. I really enjoyed it. And another thing I think is better because she's in Midgard and because she's interacting with actual people is the combat. Now, at the fundamental level, yes, the combat is still very straightforward. It's a mixture of light attacks and heavy attacks with a block and now a parry and dodging of enemy attacks. However, this game is a strict 1v1 basis. It does not have that annoying, really awful targeting system where you had to click the middle mouse wheel in order to swap targets that the first game had. It doesn't have an enemy just spawning on top of you and instantly hitting you like the first game did all the time. And it also doesn't have that annoying mechanic that's always looming over your head where, oh, if you die this many times, it's going to reset the entire game for you. Some people like that. Me, I thought that that was a little bit of a barrier to entry for a lot of people, like trying to get my uncle to play the game after telling him about it. He's like, oh, I don't really want to play it if it has this mechanic where, you know, you can completely get your progress reset if you die. And that's honestly totally understandable. So it doesn't have a lot of those things that I found very annoying. And it's a strict 1v1 basis. There will be multiple enemies and combat encounters, but, you know, they go by the video game thing of, all right, let's respect her and let's only attack her one at a time. And I think that plays a lot better. There's a lot less annoying moments in the actual combat because of it, but the combat is still just as simple. However, there's something far more visceral, far more passionate, if you will, and real about fighting human, you know? Slicing into a shadow being and they disperse into a bunch of particles is one thing in the first game, but actually driving your blade into a human, hearing them, you know, choking on their various fluids as they're struggling to even eke out a breath in their last moments is far more visceral and it hits you a lot harder than most games do. And it reminds me of a lot of like The Last of Us 2 in that regard, where, you know, it doesn't really feel great to kill people in this game. And I love that. I think that's awesome. Especially how they weave that into the narrative and how she interacts with the dead in the game. I think it does a great job of playing into that. I also think that the puzzles do a great job of not getting annoying and repetitive. In the first game, I found a couple of the puzzles, it was like, okay, dude, this puzzle again, like a couple times, the puzzles just went on a little bit too long for me in the first one. This game, I didn't have that issue. Right when I was like, okay, I've done enough of this puzzle. This should be the last of this puzzle. It was the last of this puzzle. And at least for a while, right? And I appreciate that because, like I said, in the first game, there were a couple times where I was like, okay, I've done the same thing a little too many times now. Now it's getting a little annoying. But at the end of the day, this game is, you know, the gameplay is not for everybody. For the most part, this is a walking simulator. As you're seeing from the gameplay, it is a walking simulator with some puzzles and combat sprinkled in. But for the most part, it is most definitely a walking simulator. Very similar to the first game. So if you weren't a fan of that, you're not going to be a fan of this. Okay. That's just kind of how it is. I don't really mind games like this because, like I said, I really like the narrative. The sound design is also incredible. Just like the first game, the sound design is insane. You play this game with headphones and you feel like you should be committed to the psych ward in the next 22 seconds because you feel like you yourself are also going insane. I will say the voices, they seem a little bit nicer. Maybe not nicer, but a little more calm than they did in the first game. In the first game, I felt like there'd be 6 to 7 like voice lines going on at the same time sometimes, and it would really gnaw at your psyche. Whereas this time, I feel like they're a little more calm, orderly, and organized. They're a little nicer. You know, they have the talking stick for their point of personal privilege, and they're taking turns speaking. So it's a little bit less hectic, but nonetheless, the sound design is still phenomenal in the game, and the soundtrack is phenomenal, and the voice acting is just A1 as well. Like motion capture, all of that, A1. Let's get into the negatives. The performance is not great. On my rig, which is a 4070 Ti Super, a Ryzen 7 7800X3D, 64 gigs of DDR5, 6000 megahertz RAM, and the game on an NVMe SSD. I was getting routinely like 55, 57 FPS with DLSS on and with frame generation on. And frame generation usually doubles your FPS. So I feel like if I didn't have that on, my shit would be running at 30. They also had the black bars on the top and bottom, which is a little secret that they do. They did this back with the Order 1886 as well in order to get more performance out of the game because they have to render less. And so yeah, performance, not great. If you don't have a beastly rig, then this game is a lot like Plague Tale Requiem, where you should probably know going in, it runs at best at 30 FPS on consoles, and that means you're going to need a beastly rig to handle it. So the performance and the you know, how it runs is not ideal. For the most part, I was sitting at 70 FPS, but I have a top 1% rig, you know? There's like 4 graphics cards that are better than mine on the market, you know? My PC is overkill, especially for a situation like this. And I'm only playing in 1440p. God help you if you're trying to play this in 4K. So performance, not the best. And the other negative that I would say is that I did feel like the ending was just a little bit rushed. Like there was supposed to be a little bit more there. There could have been a little bit more there. I felt like the final chapter in general kind of resolves itself a little too quickly for my liking. However, as a total package, I really enjoyed my time with the game. This is most definitely something that you should play on Game Pass, though. I do not see any reason, this is not on PlayStation, so any way that you can play this game on PC or on Xbox, you know, you have access to Game Pass. Unless you're running like Windows 7 or something like a psycho still, like at least get Windows 10, bro. Come on. Play this on Game Pass. You know, spending $10, $15 to play this game, I highly, highly recommend it. $50, I feel like is a little high. This is something I don't usually like talking about when it comes to worth, because your $50 is not the same as my $50, which is not the same as the guy next door's $50. We all have different value assessments, right? Some people, they want $1 per hour that they spend on a game. Some people, they see gaming more akin to a movie where they spend $20 for a 90-minute movie. For me, I personally don't really care about... Sorry about that. I forgot to turn off alerts. For me, I don't really care when it comes to price for a game, as long as the experience is there. But I'm, you know, a little bit more fortunate than most people when it comes to expendable income, right? So this is going to vary for you, but I think just play it on Game Pass. It's definitely worth. For my overall review of the game, my rating of it, I would honestly put this at an 8.5 out of 10. For me, a 5 is average, 6 is above average, 7's good, 8 is great, 9 is amazing, and 10 is a near perfect masterpiece. I still think it has a little bit of issues, you know, especially towards the end with the pacing. It is a little bit short for me. However, this game delivers such an unfiltered experience. And I know it's very divisive. Some people don't like these movie games, and that's totally fine. However, I have to commend Ninja Theory for sticking to their vision of the game. If you didn't like Hellblade 1, this game is not for you, man. Hellblade 2 is a straight-up sequel to Hellblade 1, and that means it has all the same flaws as Hellblade 1 did. And, you know, some people, they'll be really against that, but I commend Ninja Theory for saying this is the type of game that we're making, and you either like this game or you do not like this game, right? This is mostly a walking sim with some puzzles and some combat. And if you're somebody that can get behind that, you're fine with that, then you are going to experience one of the most raw, at times unsettling, visceral experience that gaming has to offer. If you're not somebody that likes stuff like that, you like a lot more gameplay in your games, right? Then that's totally fine. But I think it's a little bit silly that we're attacking reviewers or we're attacking the devs of the game for something like this. At the end of the day, Ninja Theory was very transparent about everything involving the game. They were transparent about what the gameplay would be. They were transparent about how long it would be. The longest I ever saw them say is 9 hours. The game is not going to take you 9 hours. You know, it took me 6.5. You do unlock 2 extra ways to play the game after you beat the game, which replace the narrator with various voices. I haven't tried those out yet because, you know, I just have other stuff to play. I'm trying to get through stuff like Elden Ring before the DLC comes out in a month or a few weeks, but I definitely am interested in seeing how that changes the experience, changing the narrator's voices, because that is obviously a big component of the game. But I really enjoyed my experience with the game. I really liked the narrative. The combat for me was improved over the first one. It didn't have a lot of the jank, and like I said, just that very real feeling of the combat is just hyper unsettling a lot of the time. But like I said, it's going to be a very divisive game. Let me know, what do you guys think about it? Did you enjoy your time with the game? Is it not really for you? Do you despise the game? Let me know. I'd love to hear. And thanks everybody for watching the review. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see all of you in the next video or stream. Bye bye.